In this video, we'll talk about an animal's 5 freedoms. 5 freedoms as a term was originally introduced by the European school of behaviorism. Essentially, it's the concept of the fundamental welfare of an animal. You can consider it to be something like the animal version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, otherwise known as Maslow's pyramid. When we're talking about the 5 freedoms in the life of a dog, these are essential requirements that provide for the welfare of our animal. And if we're talking about the correction of problematic behavior, the first thing we must do is to ensure that the 5 freedoms of an animal are met. So what are these 5 freedoms? Freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from illness, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain and suffering, freedom of the realization of behavior typical for the species. What does all this mean? Freedom from hunger and thirst. This means that the dog must always have food and water. We know some people that leave water in the dog's bowl for 2 or 3 days in a row, and the dog doesn't finish it, and that's simply not right. We should always change the dog's water. We recommend doing that at least twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. If we're talking about hot weather, for example, and the water warms up quite quickly, we would recommend changing it 3 to 5 times a day so that the dog has an opportunity to drink nice, cold water. Freedom from hunger means that our dog must not feel hungry, but at the same time, you've got to pay attention to the way you feed your dog. We should never leave the food in the bowl for the whole day. This is a very important rule for the dog's health and wellness. If the dog doesn't finish the food in 10 minutes, we take away the food bowl until the next meal. This is important because it helps dogs get used to their daily schedules. Additionally, it is a great indicator of the dog's state. If the dog knows that there's always some food in the bowl, it can eat just a bit in the morning and then a bit more in the afternoon, and every time it approaches the bowl, it'll eat a bit of food and then go away. This makes it hard to monitor the total amount of food eaten. However, by having a feeding schedule, it's easier to catch when your dog is sick because it refuses food. If there's always some food in the bowl, and we know that the dog sometimes eats and sometimes doesn't, and that it nibbles a bit throughout the day, it's hard to know if your dog has a good appetite or not. And then, quite often in these situations, we only realize our pet is sick when things get really bad. At that point, our dog is inevitably miserable, and a visit to the vet is long overdue. Also, we need to be sure not to overfeed our dog. When we overfeed our dog, it can become overweight, which can cause heart and mobility issues. Overweight dogs can also struggle with diabetes, along with many other issues. It's our responsibility to provide our dog with the correct diet, nutrients, and quantity of food. Freedom from illness. This means preventative checkups. We recommend visiting the vet once every 6 months in order to perform a checkup, get a general blood test, and evaluate the overall health and condition of your dog. This is necessary in order to notice any health problems in time. And of course, if you think your pet might be sick, it's not a great idea to wait around or try home remedies to treat them. It's the job of all responsible owners to treat their pet on time so that it doesn't suffer from pain or physical discomfort. Freedom from discomfort. This means that our dog should have a reasonable level of physical comfort in our house, at least its own bed. Even if the dog is allowed to lie on the couch, even if it sleeps with us in bed, it is very important for every room where the dog likes to spend time to have a dog bed or something similar. You don't need to spend a bunch of money on extra beds. It could even be just a towel placed in an area which is warm and protected from drafts. The dog needs to know that this is also their home and that they have their own personal space in the house, even if we may prefer having the dog sit next to us. Freedom from pain and suffering. This means that we don't leave the dog alone for a whole day. Studies show that dogs are comfortable with being left alone for 6 hours at a time. If you do have to leave your dog alone for a longer period of time, say to go to work for 8 hours, it is recommended to get it a dog sitter, dog walker, or nanny so that it doesn't feel uncomfortable and lonely. This is another consideration. If your dog experiences anxiety when separating from you or fear when walking outside, it means the dog is uncomfortable, which in turn means it is experiencing pain and suffering. When the dog doesn't feel comfortable staying at home alone or going outside, our task as a responsible owner is to solve these behavioral problems on time so that our dog feels calm and good. Freedom of behavior typical for the species. This freedom refers to the fact that any breed of dog at any age must walk a minimum of 3 hours a day. So 3 to 4 hours is the perfect amount of time for a walk. The amount of walking helps the dog to get the physical and mental activity they need. Obviously, if our dog is afraid of being outside, we shouldn't make it walk for 3 to 4 hours. However, this means that we are charged with the task of solving this problem so that our dog can enjoy its life. The freedom of normal behavior also means that dogs must have the opportunity to socialize with other dogs, especially during those puppy years of growth and development, but also when the dog is older. Even though adult dogs often don't play with other dogs, they still need to have an opportunity to greet other dogs and then continue whatever they were doing, whether it's playing, training, or something else. If our dog has a problem with aggression towards other dogs, of course, we're not going to let it off the leash in the dog park. We would be setting up for failure by expecting it not to engage species-typical behavior and fight with other dogs. Our dogs shouldn't have to feel the stress of being obligated to communicate and play with other dogs. That's why it's our job to teach them how to walk away calmly. Barking is also a species-typical behavior, so we can't prohibit our dog from barking completely. This is its means of communication. But of course, we shouldn't think in extremes. If our dog is constantly barking, vocalizing into the empty air, it's a behavioral problem that we have to solve. To sum up here, we're trying to avoid extremes and stick to the middle ground, to the standard we are pursuing. Keep in mind that you got a dog to enjoy it as a dog. If we'd wanted a little person, we would have got a little person. Let's continue respecting the dog in our dog, a different species. And let's try to understand what this species wants right now.